Now, for the moment you've all been waiting for, time for our special guest speaker. Thanks again to our LOTR members, Jane Tucker Radley and Melissa Emery. We had the privilege of hearing from Jenny Beth Martin, co-founder of Tea Party Patriots Action. Jenny Martin is one of the original organizers of the Tea Party movement. In 2009, she co-founded Tea Party Patriots, which under her leadership has grown to be the largest and most effective national umbrella group of the Tea Party movement. We are very lucky to have her. Please give her a warm welcome, Jenny Beth.
Thank you so much, Beth, and thank you for your service the last year and a half with Ladies on the Right. And thank you, everyone, for having me here. You've got such a lovely group. I really appreciate being here. Thank you to Melissa and to Jane for inviting me, and thank you to Marilyn, Tea Party founder, for starting this group. So thank you all very, very much. And Diane, right? I'm looking forward to getting to know you over the next year or so. In 1773, in Boston, Massachusetts, there were some people who had this little thing called a tea party, where citizens assembled, they made their voices heard, and they protested their government. 3 years later, 56 men signed the Declaration of Independence, pledging their lives, their fortune, and their sacred honor, giving birth to our nation. They didn't know if they would win. They didn't know if they would survive. But they knew one thing: liberty was worth the risk. In July, we celebrate our nation's 250th birthday, thanks to those men and women who helped start the great country we live in. And it's not just a birthday. That is a miracle of human history. Empires rise and fall, nations crumble, revolutions and civil wars devour their own. And yet here we are, 2.5 centuries later, still standing under the same Constitution, still guided by the same founding principles, still blessed by liberty. And the question that I want us to think about today is this: beyond the fireworks, beyond the barbecues and parades, how will you celebrate America's 250th birthday? What will you do to ensure that in another 250 years, our descendants will still be celebrating the 500th anniversary of this great country? Back in 2009, President Obama had just been inaugurated, and he was pushing through the stimulus bill, which was a massive government spending bill, and was on top of President Bush's TARP bill and bank bailouts and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac bailouts, and you name it, there was a bailout for just about everybody. And the thinking, according to people in Washington, D.C., was this had to be done because these businesses were too big to fail. In February of 2009, Rick Santelli, who's a commentator on CNBC, had a rant about the stimulus bill. And he said that he first asked the people standing behind him, he was on the floor of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and he asked the people standing behind him, who here wants to pay for your neighbors' homes that have more bathrooms than you when they can't afford it? And everyone said, boo, no, I don't want to do that. And he said, our founding fathers would be turning over in their graves. We need to have a tea party just like our founding fathers did. Well, that rant went viral. Now remember, this is 2009, not today when a rant or something happens and goes viral every 90 seconds or so on TikTok and Instagram. So it went viral, and a group of us, about 24 of us, got on a conference call organized by Michael Patrick Leahy the very next day. Michael Patrick Leahy is now with the Tennessee Star and has a Georgia Star online newspaper and several Star newspapers online across the country. We got on this conference call, and I was on that call, and we decided that we needed to strike while the iron was hot and have a tea party like our founding fathers did. Now, I didn't know a thing about tea parties, but I realized we needed to do this. So a week later, we hang up the phone on a Friday night. A week later, the very next Friday, we had 48 tea parties with over 38,000 people in attendance. 6 weeks later, we decided after that first round, we decided we needed to continue protesting the government, and what better day to protest government spending than on tax day when they're taking all our tax money to go spend recklessly. So we decided 6 weeks later we would have a tax day tea party. On that day, we had over 850 tea parties around the country with 1.2 million people in attendance. And Marilyn, did you do one here on that tax day?
We really were, and there's also one person in this room that joined me there, O.C. Fowler.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And this isn't part of my speech, but you both need to go check out this video that Byron Donalds, I saw it late last night, did, answering how he got involved. And he gave so much credit to the first round of tea parties. It'll make you feel proud and just so glad that you were part of that. He's amazing, and you should check that out. So then, after those tax day tea parties, on September 12th of that year, we had the Taxpayer March in Washington. And I helped MC and organize that event, at which Freedom Works was the primary host of. At that event, we had 1.5 million people in attendance. Tea Party Patriots formed back in February of 2009 out of those very first round of tea parties. And we're now Tea Party Patriots Action, Tea Party Patriots Foundation, and we have a 527 Super PAC, Tea Party Patriots Citizens Fund. And we stand for now what we stood for then: constitutionally limited government, personal freedom, economic freedom, and a debt-free future. We take stands, and sometimes the stands we take are not very popular, and sometimes it's a little bit stressful to take some of these stands. But like our founding fathers, we know that liberty is worth it, and it is important to gather together, make your voices heard, and petition when you are concerned about what the government is doing. And we've seen over the last several years just how dangerous it can be in America today when you exercise your First Amendment rights. But if we do not speak out, if we do not assemble, petition, and engage, we will not be able to pass liberty on to the next generation. And I don't want America's story to end at 250. I want Americans in 250 years from now to know, at the 500th birthday of America, I want them to know that we didn't give up, and that we stood up for liberty, and that we passed it on to them. Back in 2009, when this Tea Party movement was beginning, I was like many of you. I felt compelled to take action and to get involved. And I felt like I had to have a tea party, which is a little weird to say I felt like I had to have a tea party now, 16 years later, but at the time, that's what I felt like. And I felt called to do this largely because of what Rick Santelli said in that rant that he had. Remember how I said that he asked about neighbors who had more bathrooms than you and they couldn't afford their houses? Well, my then husband and I were going through and just coming out of bankruptcy. We'd lost everything. We lost our houses, we lost our cars, we had to have a garage sale and sell anything that we could get cash for to help pay for utilities. And we were moving out of our home and into a rental home. And we got a phone call from the bank. He's my then husband, he's my ex-husband now. So he answers the phone and he hears that the person who was on the phone said that there was a way that they could keep us in the house and give us a loan, and we'd only have to pay like $50 or so a month to be able to stay in this house that we could no longer afford. And he hung up the phone, he told me about it, and I said, who's crazy enough to give us a loan? We just went through bankruptcy, like we're just coming out of it. This isn't, no one normal is going to be giving us a loan. And he said, oh, it's related to those Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac bailouts, apparently. And I said, Who's crazy enough to give someone who's just out of bankruptcy a loan? Only the federal government of the United States. Heaven help us. We were opposed to the bailouts, and we said no to this loan because we didn't think it was right for our neighbors to be paying for a house we could no longer afford. It wasn't up to our friends and our family and our neighbors and you, fellow Americans across the country, to pay for something we could no longer afford. So we wound up cleaning our neighbors' homes and cleaning their bathrooms. And we did that for a short while, rather than our neighbors paying for our home and bathrooms we could not afford. So when Rick Santelli had that rant, I felt compelled to have a tea party because I felt like there should be no companies that are too big to fail. If a company runs into trouble and they get too big and they're out of control, then the government shouldn't be bailing them out. They should take responsibility and face the consequences like other businesses and other individuals in the country. But I never imagined when we turned that loan down and we went on and looked at that potential rental house and wound up renting another house. I didn't know that a few weeks later I'd be doing tea parties, and I had no idea that the turn my life would take. I had been active in the Republican Party for years. I was on the state committee and district committee, and I was a district chairman for a while. It just, I did all these things, but I didn't imagine what my life was about the turns it was going to take. I'd never even been to a protest, had no idea how to protest. That first protest in Atlanta in February of 2009, it was pouring down rain. We didn't even know to bring a PA system, and there were 500 people there. So we were having trouble communicating with the people because we didn't even think to bring a PA system. And then my story a few weeks later was on the front page of USA Today, and my entire life has changed, and I've been doing this Tea Party movement and standing for liberty ever since then. And during that time when things were so tough, I leaned on a Bible verse from Proverbs. You probably all have heard of it. It's Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your path. Sometimes I would pray that verse over and over, almost as if it were a mantra. God, I'm trusting you. I have no idea what I'm going to do, but I'm trusting you. Please help me figure out what I need to do next. It was so hard, but I trusted God, and I listened to his call, and in doing so, I've been able to help make a difference, and I know that's what you guys are trying to do as well. And that's what you just were talking about, making a difference here in Georgia, not just for the November elections, but for the future of Georgia and the future of our country. When the Tea Party movement started, we protested a lot. Our protests were peaceful, and we even bought, unlike what's happening in Minnesota right now, we even bought garbage bags to clean up after ourselves. Like we wanted to make sure that we were following the law and doing everything that we were supposed to. We opposed Obamacare. We stopped cap and trade. We stopped the Gang of Eight from granting amnesty to illegal immigrants and helped hold the line until President Trump wound up being president so that he could secure the border. Year after year, we have tried to reduce government spending, and heaven knows we still have a lot of work to do with that. But sometimes we've had a little bit of success in reducing some spending or reducing the increase of spending. In January of 2020, and did this group start in 2020, ladies on the right? Okay, so in January 2020, I started following COVID as it spread throughout the world. And this is before we were really talking about it in America. So I was following it about 9 weeks before lockdowns were even being talked about here in America. And I watched how other countries were reacting, and I realized our country was going to shut down. I did everything I could to try to prevent that from happening. And then once it began happening, I did everything I could to try to make it to try to get everything open, and in my own community, I talked to my sheriff, my county commissioners, the school board, and did everything we could to keep things sane. And thankfully, in Cherokee County, it was pretty sane. And in Georgia, thanks to Governor Kemp, who you may or may not have other issues with, but when it comes to reopening the state, I will always and forever be grateful that he did that, and our state was able to be an example for the rest of the nation. In July of 2020, I ended up speaking at a roundtable at the White House with President Trump, along with a bunch of other people from the administration, so-called experts like Dr. Deborah Bricks and her scarves, and a few college administrators, high school principals, school board members. I was there as a mom and also as a person who helped start the Tea Party movement, and I advocated for reopening our schools. The video from my speech to President Trump that day wound up going viral, and the last time I checked on Dan Bongino's Facebook page, it had over 20 million views from that particular speech. A week or two later, I brought doctors into Washington, D.C., and they stood before the Supreme Court and had a press conference wearing white coats. Some of you may have seen those videos. Well, I organized that and emceed that, and it went viral. It was one of the tech websites wrote that it was the most viral video ever in the history of the internet until it was shut down, which it was shut down within 12 hours, but within those 12 hours we had over 22 million views in 12 hours. That's why a lot of you are nodding and you saw it, because it went viral so quickly. But these things that I help do, I'm not special. I'm not special, I'm just willing. And so are you. That's why you're here. I've done all I could, trusting God, acknowledging Him, and not knowing where exactly I was going, but trusting that if I listened to Him, He would help make straight my path. And in doing that, I've been able to advocate for constitutionally limited government and to have the courage to speak out, even when it wasn't popular to do so, and even when most people in the world were afraid of what we were saying. And that's what you are doing too. It's why you're here. It's why groups like Ladies on the Right exist. And it's what we must continue to do as we go forward, so that we can protect the First Amendment, hold on to free speech and assembly and petition, protect liberty for our children and grandchildren. For years, I naively thought most Americans, really, I thought all Americans, at least loved our country, and respected the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. I figured, we could disagree on policy, but they still loved our country. And that, I learned, in a very shocking way, was completely naive and wrong. In 2013, I was speaking at a university, and in light of what we've seen on college campuses in the last 6 months or so, it should not be surprising that it was a college campus where this happened. And I was on a panel at the University of Washington with some insanely leftist liberal professor who had researched, and I use air quotes for that, the Tea Party movement, and there were a few other people, and speaking to college students, and it was a very hostile environment. So they were asking a lot of questions, I'm answering the questions, and at the end, when I had my closing statement, I did what I often do in situations like that. And I'd spoken at Harvard before, and it was hostile there too, but this worked at Harvard, and I thought it would work in Seattle, outside of Seattle, Washington. It didn't, but I thought I could talk about and say something along hang on one second, before I get to that, let me show you this. There was this man who was speaking there, and he was asking me questions, and in some of what he was asking, he said that he had been to New York to train with Occupy Wall Street, was part of the original people who were in Occupy Wall Street, and then went back to Seattle and was deployed back to Seattle to start Occupy Seattle. Now, when I heard that from him, he confirmed a few things for me. I had no idea he was confirming it, but it confirmed to me that what I suspected, and that was that these people who were doing Occupy Wall Street had a lot of training, and there was a lot of organizing and money going on. Because when we started those tea parties, we didn't even have a PA system. We were bringing trash bags to clean up after ourselves that we pulled out from underneath our kitchen sinks. They were bringing tents and barriers and barricades and all sorts of things to occupy the area. So he confirmed that, but he was very hostile. So I'm trying to wrap it up, and I said something along the lines of, I know we have disagreements, but I think we can all say that we love America and we respect the First Amendment. And I was going to try to close from there saying we can agree to disagree and still walk away knowing we're fellow Americans and we love our country. He interrupted me, he cut me off, and he said these words that I'll never forget. He said, "No, I don't love America. I hate America. I want to create chaos, to overthrow our government, and to replace this form of government." And I was taken aback, because I had never heard that much hostility for our entire country. I was angry about policies, but I didn't wish anyone in the government dead. You know, I didn't hate people in the government. I hated what they did, but I didn't hate the people. He hated me, and he hates the way that our country is. And it taught me a few things. First, as I mentioned, Occupy Wall Street was very well funded. This man was he was an outright socialist, Marxist, communist. And he hated our country. And again, I went through that. I was shocked by this, just visceral hatred. Third, he and his network were deliberately trying to disrupt our government to create chaos because they want to overthrow it. This became very important to me in the years since then, because as I learned more over the years, as I learned about what Antifa was, and I watched Antifa start and the Chaz zones, and then the rioting in Minnesota in 2020, and the rioting now today, but especially Antifa, I suspect he was part of Antifa. And I think Antifa, though they say that they're disconnected, I think that they are much better connected than they want people to think that they are. And we're facing the same kind of mentality in Minnesota, in Portland, where people are rioting, where they're trying to disrupt the president today. And then during that same time in 2013, I realized as we were looking at history that this man not liking our country and hating our country wasn't the first time this has happened in our country. And of course, it happened. I'm sure there were people who hated our country during the Civil War, so I'm not glossing over that. But 100 years prior, in 1913, Woodrow Wilson, he didn't like our country either, and he doesn't like our founding documents. And the idea that we have a living constitution stems from things that he did, because he didn't like our Constitution. And back in 1913, he did three things that we're still suffering from, the effects of today. He did many things, but these three really top the list. We have direct election of senators rather than states electing our senators, so it weakens state power and checks and balances on the government. He put the income tax in place, which expanded federal control, and he created the Federal Reserve, which centralized economic power. And as he was doing that, back in 1913, the Marxism, the communism, the socialist type ideas were beginning to take foothold across the world and even in our own country. So it shouldn't really be shocking that in 2013 I encountered someone who had been so indoctrinated and hated our country so much, but we've been facing these countries for a long time, problems for a long time. And while there is still a huge percentage of Americans who love our country and respect the Constitution, there's another segment who doesn't, and they are socialist and Marxist, and they see the Constitution as a living document that can evolve over time. And they want to replace our constitutional republic with a Marxist form of government. And we see the evidence of this right now. Ideas like socialism and Marxism have taken root. Look at the results. The lawlessness in Minnesota, the violent hatred towards law enforcement and ICE, attempts on President Trump's life, the actual assassination of my friend, Charlie Kirk. Young people embracing socialism, a generation taught to blame government failures on capitalism. This is real, and it is dangerous. And if we don't get hold of it, we won't have a country to celebrate in 250 years from now. So as we begin to celebrate America's 250th anniversary or birthday, there are three things we have to do. One, we must speak up and remind people about America's founding, about the importance of our constitutional republic and how precious liberty is. And we have to spread the word about this relentlessly. We should celebrate big with wonderful fireworks and big parades, and it should be as big as what we experienced back in 1976. And I was just a little kid then, but I remember it. And I want people today and 50 years from now to remember that when we were 250, we had a huge celebration. Host house parties, talk about the birthday of the country, and like have a little neighborhood gathering just for the 250th birthday before Independence Day. Start Constitution study groups. Add a Constitution minute to your meetings. Post about the Constitution and liberty on social media. Tea Party Patriots Action is going to be doing a nationwide bus tour about the First Amendment in May and June, because freedom only survives when it is exercised. And you get that. That's why you're meeting and you're assembling and you're speaking today. So that's number one. Celebrate big, but remind people about the importance of liberty as you do so. Number two, we have to tell the truth about the results President Trump has had. He's got a proven track record, and we're seeing the results, but I think because there's so much stuff that is happening and so much stuff that is coming out in the media and on social media that we just overlook all of the good things he's doing. Under Democrats, inflation hit 5-decade highs, and now it's cut in half and is falling. Gas prices under Biden averaged $5 a gallon, record highs. Today, they're averaging below $3 for the first time in years. Wars raged worldwide under Biden's weakness. President Trump restored peace through strength, ending 8 conflicts around the world. Border apprehensions averaged 5,000 daily, over 5,000 daily under President Biden. Now they've dropped 95%. We have 0 illegal aliens released into our communities. President Trump's one big beautiful bill, which is the working families tax cut, it slashed taxes, it unleashed energy dominance, making us energy independent again, it secured the border, it bolstered national defense with record military funding. It strengthened healthcare by cutting waste, fraud, and abuse while protecting pre-existing conditions. And then there are even more wins. The stock market is shattering records, boosting retirement savings for millions. We've saved taxpayers $9 billion in wasteful spending in foreign aid and in biased news outlets like NPR and PBS, thanks to President Trump's rescission plan, which was passed by Congress. President Trump has added over 687,000 private sector jobs, with 100% of all net job creation going to American-born citizens. Hospital systems across the country have halted the so-called gender-affirming care. He removed men from women's sports. He's ending radical indoctrination in K through 12 schools. The trade deficit has narrowed to the smallest since mid-2020. The Trump administration has opened 20 healthcare clinics for veterans. We stood firm with allies like Israel. We obliterated Iran's nuclear program. Prescription drug prices are dropping because of the reforms he's making. We're on track for the largest one-year drop in murders on record. And finally, we're addressing big tech censorship and protecting free speech online. These aren't just policies. They're real improvements to everyday life. And these policies work. We need to share them far and wide. Third, we have to win elections. We must hold the House. We must hold the Senate. And here in Georgia, we have to protect the statewide offices. Historically, this is a huge challenge, and it's unlikely to happen. Parties that are in power usually lose in the midterm elections. But we're living in history-breaking times. President Trump's re-election is proof of that. The slim majority in the House actually still accomplishing things is another evidence of proof of it. And Democrats are in disarray. In November of last year, in their own extensive polling, it showed that working class voters see Democrats as weak, woke, and out of touch. Democrat voters tell pollsters that they are dissatisfied, citing absence of a clear party leader and internal division. And of course, those stars are far-left radicals like AOC, Crockett, and Mondami, and then weak governors like Newsom and Walz. The staggering theft of billions of taxpayer dollars recently exposed in Minnesota promises to be one of the biggest political scandals in decades, and maybe only the tip of the iceberg as other Democrat states are investigated. A Quinnipiac poll on December 17th shows that 73% of Americans specifically disapprove of Democrats in Congress, and Democrats enter this year with the worst numbers they've ever recorded. They have a net approval rating of -6 among their own party. Republicans, plus 59 points among their own party. This means messy Democrat primaries in key districts where radicals will challenge incumbents. That's going to cost them millions of dollars. They're going to be spending that millions of dollars attacking one another. And then if the radicals win in the primaries, they're going to be up against common sense Republicans who I think the middle of the country are going to gravitate towards more than the radical left. Now let me be very clear about what's at stake. Democrats are in disarray, so that works to our advantage. But if we don't hold the House and we don't hold the Senate, these radical leftists will impeach President Trump on day one. And they won't stop there. They'll impeach J.D. Vance, our vice president. They'll impeach Kristi Noem, DHS secretary. And because they are so rabid with Trump derangement syndrome, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they just tried to go down the list of every single cabinet secretary and impeach everyone just to say they did it. This is not speculation about Trump being impeached again for the third time if they're reelected. This is their stated goal. It's what they've promised to do. So the question is not whether we can hold the House and the Senate, the question is whether we will hold the House and the Senate. So how can you help with that? Obviously, you can and you should get involved in elections, volunteer on the races that were up before, and donate to those races. Our super PAC, Tea Party Patriot Citizens Fund, will be heavily involved in Georgia. We'll be involved in other states, but our office is in Cherokee County, so we're going to be heavily involved here, especially in the Senate race. And we could use your help. We'll be going door to door. We're going to use a relational organizing app, which is probably something you may not be familiar with, for people to reach out to their friends and family to determine whether they're going to vote conservative, and if they are voting conservative, what is their plan to vote? Will they vote early in person? Will they vote by mail, absentee, or will they vote on election day? Then once you know how your friends and family are going to vote, you go make sure they actually execute that plan and they vote either in person, early, absentee, however they plan to do it. You make sure they get it done and chase their ballots until they've cast them. I messed my screen up there for a second. Then we're going to be handwriting postcards to swing voters in Georgia and possibly in other states. It's really easy. You handwrite a note about why you're supporting a particular candidate, and then we mail it to voters in Georgia who are undecided. And what's really interesting about this, we've done this for several election cycles. We get calls and sometimes emails from people. They go and look up our website, find our email, reach out to us, and then they thank us for the postcard because it's not like the regular political mail, it's actually a real handwritten note on it. So that's something that you can do, and we'll have volunteers from Georgia doing this, and then we'll have volunteers from all around the entire country helping us get those done for Georgia and possibly beyond. And finally, Tea Party Patriots Action will be working on poll watchers and poll workers. We'll recruit and train them. It's very important that we continue to watch our elections and work the elections to make sure we've got those safeguards in place to keep the election clean, and so that when the election is over, we can trust the outcome of it. We can make a difference for future generations, and that's why all of you are here. It's why Ladies on the Right exist, and it's what we must continue to do as we go forward so that we can protect the First Amendment, the rights of free speech, all of the rights protected in the Constitution, and so we can make our country great again, and to protect liberty for our children and our grandchildren. Samuel Adams organized the original Boston Tea Party. Thomas Jefferson called him the Patriarch of Liberty. And there's a quote that is often attributed to Samuel Adams, though it wasn't actually something he said. It's actually from the 1980s, but it summarizes the essence of what he thought. And it's this: it does not take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority keen on setting brush fires in the minds of men. And that's what you're doing. That's exactly what you're doing. Right now, we do have a majority in the House and Senate, and we've got President Trump in the White House. Republicans are in control, and that feels good. But sometimes you look around, you look at this room, you look in your own community, and you think the percentage of people who are involved and active is not as high as you would like it to be. But it doesn't take a lot. It just takes dedicated people who never give up, who are tireless and are committed to liberty. And that's what you are. And I encourage you to lean on God. You don't always have to know exactly where you're going. Just trust God and acknowledge Him and pray He'll make your path straight and empower you to keep standing up for liberty. So beyond the fireworks, beyond the barbecues and the parties in July, celebrate America's 250th birthday by being active citizens. Educate your neighbors about our founding. Share the good news about what President Trump is doing. Work to elect constitutional conservatives who will preserve our liberty so that in 250 years from now, our great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren will know you helped preserve liberty in this country for them. Thank you so much. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you. And then, do we have?
We have time for just a
Couple questions.
And so, who has a question? Have a question, raise your hand. Come on, give me a question.
Thank you for being here today, Jeannie Beth. Did I understand you to say that this was going to be, the cards you were sending out were going to be handwritten and not auto pen? Is that right?
That's what you heard,
Just
absolutely.
wondering, just checking. All right,
Yes,
thank you.
absolutely. And that's my pleasure to be here. No other questions?
I have one question.
Yes.
I'm wondering and I'm not sure with all your travels if you even heard, a lot of you may not have, but yesterday the Supreme Court had a major ruling on election integrity saying that candidates now have standing, which most of our cases from 2020 never were heard because you didn't have standing, even if you're a candidate. And then now that you can contest that before 10 days, you don't have to wait until within 10 days afterwards. Are you familiar enough with that to speak to that and how it impacts Georgia?
I can speak to it a little bit. It did not address the underlying the other issues about that case. It's a case, I believe, that Judicial Watch has brought before the Supreme Court. And I don't know if they're going to go back and address the other things that Tom Fitton wanted them to be addressing, which is whether or not ballots can continue to come in after Election Day. And I've heard Tom Fitton talk about this several times. The Constitution says there is an election day. It doesn't say days or weeks or months. And he thinks that once the election day happens, ballots should not continue to come in, affecting the outcome of the election. So that's, I believe, the reason the case was going forward. But what the court said yesterday is exactly what you said, that candidates actually have standing and are able to bring these cases forward. What may have happened, and I'm not positive on this, is that the candidate who was suing about whether you could continue to count ballots after Election Day, and I think it was in New Jersey, and the ballots just keep coming in for a couple weeks. I think they must have said you don't have standing to bring this case before us, so the court is coming back and going, yes, you do have standing. So that's very important. In Georgia, I was on President Trump's legal team. I'm not an attorney, but I organize people really well. And I was on his legal team in 2020. So all the complaints that went into the party headquarters from Election Day, all those thousands of complaints that people had around the country, we took those, matched them up with volunteer attorneys, got depositions created, and then those depositions were used in President Trump's lawsuit. And they never came back and said President Trump did not have standing, but the judges in Fulton County broke the law, I contend, because when a case when an election case goes before a court here in Georgia, you're supposed to have a judge assigned immediately. And, you know, I'm not an attorney, I'm just a normal citizen, so when I hear the word immediately, I think it means like right away. And the case is supposed to be heard in less than 30 days. And it took over 45 days to get a judge assigned to him. And then they finally said they would hear the case on January 8th, 2 days after the Congress voted on the electors, on accepting them. So I think it's very important. Anything that the courts can do to say that a candidate has standing, it's very important. Our law is very clear in Georgia. If there are enough votes that were cast fraudulently, which is very hard to prove. It's very hard to prove fraud. But it can also just be misconduct, or it can just be mistakes. Like, it can just be human error. I don't remember the exact word for it, but it can be that simple. If there are enough votes that it calls into question the outcome of the election, then you're supposed to be able to have a new election in Georgia. And I think we should have had that in 2020. And we could have had that because we had an election that took place before the day before the electors were accepted. Sorry, I could go on about that forever. But it's part of the reason why poll watchers and poll workers also are so important. We need to make sure that we keep showing up. I know that things went well in the last election here in Georgia for us, but we can't take it for granted.
Exactly.
Thank you, that's perfect.
Thank you.
And ladies on the right would like to contribute to your Tea Party Patriots Action, and we would love to help you. Reach out to us. We have people who are working with getting community volunteers, so we would love to help you, and thank you so much. That was a great speech.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Awesome. Oh,
Let me set this down. Thank you.
all right, to close us out. There we go. All right, perfect slide here. In closing, I'll leave you with a couple of thoughts. As become all too evident with our recent events in Venezuela, which is the proxy for the penetration of China, Russia, and Iran into our Western Hemisphere, no doubt, it's no longer about Republicans versus Democrats. It's America versus communism, to Jenny Beth's point. And that's the battle America must win. So I thought, and this fits perfectly, I mean, we didn't coordinate this, but this fits perfectly with everything that's been said today.
Nothing worth
Here's a
doing is
2-minute
ever easy.
video from Trump. Go ahead. To get us motivated.
You'll have bad moments. You gotta love what you're doing. And if you don't, just do something else. Keep standing up always for your values. Keep loving your country. And one of the most important things, never, ever quit. Never quit. Then ask yourself, what imprint will you leave in the sands of history? What will future Americans say we did in our brief time right here on Earth? Did we take risks? Did we dare to defy expectations? Did we challenge accepted wisdom and take on established systems? In my short time in Washington, understand how the system is broken. A small group of failed voices who think they know everything and understand everyone want to tell everybody else how to live and what to do and how to think. But you aren't going to let other people tell you what you believe, especially when you know that you're right. I know that each of you will be a warrior for the truth, will be a warrior for our country and for your family. I know that each of you will do what is right, not what is the easy way, and that you will be true to yourself and your country and your beliefs. Remember this, nothing worth doing ever came easy. Following your convictions means you must be willing to face criticism from those who lack courage or the guts or the stamina to take it and to do it. It's called the road less traveled.
And when times get tough, and they will, remember, this is what we're fighting
Nothing worth
for.
doing is ever easy.
Whoops. Uh-oh, I preempted President Trump. Not everybody does that. And when times get tough, and they will, remember this is what we're fighting for. Freedom for our next generation to come. It's not about most of us in this room. We've lived a great life. We hope we don't go tomorrow, but if we do, hey, it's been great. But it's for those kids and grandkids out there. That's going to choke me up, but that's what it's all about. Keep your eye on the prize. Thank you.